On April 17, 1955, Albert Einstein was hospitalized with chest pains. He didn't realize it at the time, but the largest vessel in his body, the aorta, the part where it descends into his abdomen, had swollen and ruptured, and he was bleeding internally. At the time, he was busy preparing a televised speech to celebrate Israel's 7th anniversary. His doctors wanted to operate on him immediately, but Einstein, who had been operated on for the same reason 8 years earlier, must have realized that his time had come and gone, and refused with these immortal words: "I will die when I want to die. There is no point in artificially prolonging life. I have done my part. It is time for me to go, and I will go gracefully." And indeed, he passed away early the next day at Princeton Hospital. But the really interesting thing happened during Einstein's autopsy. Just 7 hours after the great genius's death, Thomas Harvey, the pathologist who performed the autopsy, cut Einstein's brain out of his body and froze it by injecting it with 10% formalin, without the permission of Einstein's family. His aim was to study this brain, which he believed to be unique, to discover what made him so brilliant. But Einstein hated the idolization of himself, and so he wanted his body cremated and his ashes scattered in secret. So Harvey had completely violated Einstein's will. Moreover, he not only removed his brain, but also his eyes and gave them to Henry Abrams, Einstein's ophthalmologist. When the doctor realized that he was going to get burned, he went to Einstein's son Hans and managed to convince him of the importance of what he had done and to get retroactive permission. He thus avoided legal liability, but he had one condition from Hans: that his father's brain would be analyzed solely and exclusively for academic study, and that the results would be published in reputable academic journals. Harvey promised this and said he would publish his findings within a year at the latest. And indeed, Einstein's brain has been the subject of more than one study since then. What have researchers found? Can we find traces of this great genius in his brain? Let's take a look. One of the most common misconceptions about Einstein is that despite being so smart, his grades at school were as bad as all of ours. It's not hard to see why people want to believe this. If even Einstein was treated like an idiot in school, we can be like Einstein in the future. That's partly why I made this video. If you correctly identify what made Einstein Einstein, you can be like him, or even better than him. But if you want to be successful, first of all, you have to stop lying to yourself. Of course, school grades alone are not a major factor in determining the future, but that doesn't change the fact that Einstein's grades were pretty good. How do we know this? Let's look at his report card from his senior year of high school on September 30th, 1896. In the late 1800s, as today, the highest grade in Switzerland was 6 and the lowest was 1. If you look carefully at his report card, you can see that he got a 6 in algebra, geometry, physics, and history, a 5 in chemistry, natural history, and German, and a 4 in drawing and geography. The lowest grade was a 3 in French language and literature. Not bad at all. Einstein was not only successful in high school. Einstein's mother, Pauline, wrote a letter to her sister when Einstein first started school and said, "Yesterday, Albert received his report card. He is again at the top of his class, and his report card is excellent." So Einstein was a very successful student throughout his school life. Of course, like every student, he had his disagreements with his teachers. For example, in middle school at the Luitpold Gymnasium, as it was then called, one of his teachers said, "I wish Einstein had not been my student." But it wasn't because Einstein was lazy or anything. It was because he sat in the back row and often smiled at his lectures. The teacher felt that Einstein didn't respect him, and so at one point he became angry and said, "You'll never amount to anything." But we can't judge a person's whole school life on anecdotes like this. We have to look at overall achievement and grades. And when we do that, we see that Einstein was not a failing student at all. So why do people keep spreading this nonsense? As I said, there is something comforting about believing that Einstein was also treated as an idiot by the education system. Yes, and Einstein, like many others, hated the militaristic tone of the schools and the systematic approach to education, He wrote about it repeatedly in his letters. But not only that, another potential source for the claim that Einstein's grades were bad was the grading system used in Switzerland. Einstein was born on March 14, 1879 in Imperial Germany, where he studied until high school. In Germany's school system, 1 was the highest grade and 6 was the lowest, the opposite of Switzerland. So before he started studying in Switzerland, his report cards were always filled with 1, the highest grade. But many people confuse this with the Swiss system and think that this is the lowest grade. All this adds to the confusion, but as far as we can see from his parents' letters and other surviving records, Einstein's grades were always good or very good. So what was the reason Einstein's grades were so good, or why his genius would shine so brightly later on? Could the secret be in his brain? This is a question that has fascinated scientists for decades. Not just Einstein, but geniuses in general. Can we pinpoint specifically what it is in the brain that makes them geniuses? Are geniuses born that way, or are they so obsessed with a certain subject that certain parts of their brains are overdeveloped? Can we distinguish that? Here, we have the opportunity to discover something about this, thanks to the pathologist Harvey's hasty decision, perhaps out of the blue, to be mesmerized by the magnitude of the genius and mystery that lay before him. After removing Einstein's brain, Harvey took dozens of different photographs of it, and then, together with his mentor Harry Ziver, cut it into 240 pieces, each roughly 10 cubic centimeters. He then made microscope slides from these pieces. But Harvey never kept his promise and was unable to publish anything within a year, because he couldn't find the findings that would make a difference, or rather, he didn't know where to look. In 1949, 4 years after Einstein's death, the first research results on the brain were published. The suspicion was whether there was a very different growth in Einstein's brain region. One of the important results was that Einstein had a lot of gray matter in the posterior region of the cerebral cortex. The cerebral cortex is a structure rich in gray matter, which is known to be involved in cognitive functions in general. They also found that one area of Einstein's cerebral cortex had slightly more convolutions than others. But was this a characteristic unique to Einstein? Or is it something that people with high IQs in general have? These questions are a little more difficult to answer because Einstein's brain was just one brain sample. And before other similar brains were examined, a number of changes were made, even some things that were against the rules. For example, both hemispheres of Einstein's brain were almost equal in size, but the right hemisphere, especially the area involved in motor skills, was slightly larger. In short, it is a bit troubling to draw a definitive conclusion based on Einstein's brain alone, without doing similar research on other brains. What do we see when we examine the brain? Many studies reveal that the complexity of brain functions is increasing. But it's not just the brain. The information revealed after Einstein's posthumous autopsy reveals something more interesting. There are also some structural differences in Einstein's brain cells. The neurons of Einstein's brain cells were slightly longer than normal brain cells. This could mean that there are more connections between neurons, and therefore information is exchanged faster. However, this alone is not enough to explain Einstein's great achievement. A more comprehensive and long-term study is needed. It is unlikely to find the source of his genius in brain structure alone. Brain structure and function are closely related to personal characteristics and life experiences. Therefore, when we study Einstein's brain, it is a complex task to find out whether his brain structure influenced his ability to solve mathematical and physical problems. Genius is probably a combination of brain structure and function. So, Einstein's brain may have contained an extraordinary talent, but it also required a favorable education and living conditions for this talent to develop. As a result, research on the brain is still ongoing, and more data is needed to understand how Einstein's brain was different. While these studies on Einstein's brain help us understand what a special person he was, Finding the source of genius is a complex and multidimensional process. We know Einstein's brain was special, but that doesn't mean it was the sole cause of his mathematical and scientific achievements. Involvement is a combination of genetics, environmental factors, and personal endeavors, which is why scientists continue to study it. What are your thoughts on this? Is the secret of genius only in brain structure, or are there other factors as well? Let us know in the comments. We would love to discuss this topic with you. Don't forget to like our video and subscribe to our channel. Liking the video helps us reach more people, and if you subscribe, you will be the first to know about our new videos. See you in the next video.